At first, it sounds a little funny. Who worries when opening a can of sardines? But when you think about it, that is exactly the problem. Sardines used to be the kind of food you did not have to think about. Open the can, grab some crackers, get through a quick, cheap filling meal, but now, all it takes is one can that smells a little off oil that feels too heavy, or saltiness that lingers too long, and people start asking themselves, am I eating fish, or am I eating an entire cheap processing formula hidden inside a can? This video is not here to put canned sardines on trial. On the contrary, sardines are still one of the foods worth keeping in your pantry if you know how to choose the right can. Today I will take you through 4 cans of sardines you should look at more carefully before buying. Then 3 more trustworthy choices for anyone who wants to eat sardines long term. A few names may surprise you, not because they are terribly bad, but because they reveal one truth in the world of canned sardines: the fish is sometimes the least worrying part. Number 1, Beach Cliff. Beach Cliff is the kind of sardine can many people buy almost without thinking. It does not try to look fancy. It does not tell a Portuguese story. It does not promise any kind of gourmet experience. It just sits there on the shelf, cheap. Easy to grab, easy to open, and familiar enough for people to think a few crackers, 1 small can of fish, and that is a meal done. And to be fair, that is exactly why Beach Cliff exists. Not everyone wants to pay $5 or $6 for a can of sardines. Some days, people just need a quick, cheap protein item they can keep in the pantry with no cooking and not much cleanup. For that kind of need, Beach Cliff has a very clear place. But that is also its trap. The problem with Beach Cliff is not that you open 1 can and something immediately goes wrong. Saying that would be going too far. The problem is that it is too easy for it to become a habit. 1 small can, 1 light meal, 1 time that does not seem like much. Then next time, more crackers. The time after that, some hot sauce, maybe with bread mustard or whatever else is left in the kitchen cabinet. And before you realize it, that light meal no longer feels as light as it did at first. On Beach Cliff's nutrition information, some flavored or sauced varieties can reach around 500 milligrams of sodium per can, which is about 22% daily value. At first, that does not sound like a shocking number, but sardines are rarely eaten alone. When you add crackers, bread sauce, or other salty sides, that sodium starts to carry much more weight. That is why I do not see Beach Cliff as a disaster. I see it as a can of fish that needs to be put in the right place. If you only eat it once in a while and you know what you are buying, that is fine. But if sardines are something you eat every week, then the sauce, the liquid, the oil, and the sodium are no longer side details. The solution is not complicated either. If you still like Beach Cliff, look closely at the variety you are buying. Prioritize water-packed or no-salt added options if you can find them. Do not turn the hot sauce, mustard, or flavored sauce varieties into your weekly default. Beach Cliff does not scare you. It makes you drop your guard 1 small can at a time. But at least with a can like this, buyers still understand that they are choosing a cheap option with clear trade-offs. With the next can, the story starts to change. Because sometimes the thing that makes people drop their guard is not a low price, but a name that feels too familiar. Number 2, Chicken of the Sea lightly smoked sardines in oil. There are some brands people no longer really read. They just see the logo and put it in the cart. Chicken of the Sea is that kind of name. For many Americans, that name does not begin with sardines. It begins with tuna sandwiches, lunchboxes, pantries, and cans of tuna that have sat in family kitchens for generations. So when they see Chicken of the Sea on a can of sardines, buyers easily bring that same level of trust with them. The logo has already done half the work before the lid is even opened. But tuna and sardines are not the same experience. Tuna is often mixed with mayo, celery sandwich bread, or other seasonings. Sardines are much more direct. You open the can and immediately face the fish, the oil, the smell, the texture, and the aftertaste. With canned sardines, the liquid inside the can has almost nowhere to hide. This comment is not enough to conclude that all of Chicken of the Sea has a problem, but it touches on a pattern that is very familiar with flavored sardine cans. The fish may be fine, but does the part that comes with it really lift it up? With the lightly smoked sardines in oil variety. The product information still lists soybean oil, salt, and smoke flavor. There is nothing there that needs to be blown into a disaster. But if the oil and smoke flavor do not make the can of fish taste cleaner, easier to eat, or more worth keeping, then the question is very simple. Are you paying for the fish or for a layer of flavor that does not do as much as the front of the package promises? A good can of sardines does not just sell the fish. It also makes you not want to pour out the oil the moment you open the lid. If that oil is not something you would want to dip bread into, mix into a salad, or at least eat with the fish without feeling like it is a waste, then the familiar logo starts to weaken very quickly. I'm not saying you have to swear off chicken of the sea. If you like it, keep using it. But do not buy it just because the logo feels familiar. Look closely at the variety you choose. Prioritize packed in water if you want to avoid the oil debate, and ask whether the smoke flavor is doing more work than the fish itself. Sometimes people decide to trust a can of fish before they even open the lid, and that is when the logo starts to matter more than what is inside. Number 3, Bumble Bee Sardines and oil. Even after you have learned to look closely at the oil and flavor inside the can, there is still another thing that is even easier to miss. The word sardines on the package is not always as simple as buyers think. Bumble Bee is a big name in American kitchens. Like chicken of the sea, it does not need much introduction. People know Bumble Bee from tuna, from sandwiches, from cheap and convenient seafood cans that have sat on supermarket shelves for years. So, when they see Bumble Bee sardines in oil, many people do not come in with suspicion. They think sardines are just sardines. But with canned sardines, that sentence is not always that simple. What stands out in some Bumble Bee sardines in oil varieties is that the product information may list sprats along with soybean oil salt and natural smoke flavoring. And this is where we have to be fair. Sprats do not mean fake fish. In the canned food world, many small fish can be sold under the sardine type category. The issue is not whether it is legal or not. The issue is buyer expectations. When an average American hears sardines, they may picture a can of small, firm fish with a clear flavor closer to the Moroccan or Portuguese sardines that canned fish fans often talk about. But when they open a budget can and realize the experience leans more towards small fish in oil, a light, smoky smell, a softer texture, and a flavor that does not really match what they imagined, that letdown does not come from danger. It comes from the gap between the label and the expectation. Imagine buying that can because you want a real sardine meal. You open the lid, see oil covering the fish, smell the smoke first, and find fish that are smaller or softer than you expected. It can still be edible, it can still be cheap protein. But the question starts to appear, am I buying the sardine experience I actually wanted, or am I just buying a can of small fish placed under a name I already trusted? I do not think Bumble Bee is a name that needs to be removed from the cart forever. If you need a cheap, convenient, easy-to-find can of fish, it still has its role. But if you are looking for sardines with a clear source, a cleaner fish flavor, and oil worth keeping, read the species and ingredient information more carefully before buying. Not fake fish. But sometimes a legal can of fish is still not the experience you thought you were paying for. Number 4, Ocean Prince/Crown Prince Basic Smoked Lines. People who are new to sardines sometimes like cans with a strong smoked flavor because it makes the fish taste less fishy. But longtime sardine eaters often notice the opposite. If a can needs too much smoke to make the fish easy to eat, then how much real character is left underneath? This is why Ocean Prince and a few Crown Prince Basic Smoked Lines should be placed in the group you need to think about more carefully. Not because the fish is always bad, not because this is something scary, but because with budget smoked lines, the processing sometimes steps in front of the fish. In some basic smoked lines, the product information still lists soybean oil salt and smoke flavor. There is nothing there that needs to be turned into drama. But with sardines, the important thing is not just the ingredient list. It is the feeling when you open the can. What smell rises first, whether the oil feels heavy, what taste stays behind at the end. A good can of sardines can be a little fishy, a little briny, a little oily, but it still makes you feel like you just ate fish. With some processing heavy smoked cans, though, the smoke flavor steps forward and lingers longer than the fish itself. The texture is softer. The oil becomes something you want to pour out instead of keep for bread or salad. And that is the moment people start to realize sometimes the cheapness is not in the fish, but in the way the fish has been processed. This does not mean every Crown Prince line is the same, but if you buy sardines because you want a clear, clean, memorable fish flavor, then budget smoked lines are where you should slow down a little before putting them in your cart. A good can of sardines should leave you remembering the fish after you finish eating, not the smoke flavor that covered it from the moment you popped the lid. After all those cans where the oil smoke flavor or processing method starts to overpower the fish itself, the next part will be a little different. Let's go through 3 brands that I think are more worth considering if you want to eat sardines long-term while still feeling like you are eating a decent pantry food, not just a can of fish processed to taste extra strong. Number 1 Season brand. If a video about canned sardines does not mention Morocco, I would immediately feel like something is missing. For longtime sardine eaters, Morocco is not a side detail. It is one of the names that often comes up when people talk about canned sardines with real value, not too flashy, not too fancy, but with a reason to be trusted. Season enters this list not because it is glamorous, but because it answers one thing. Longtime sardine eaters often ask, where does the fish come from? And is this good enough to eat again and again? Season has one very clear advantage. It brings Morocco right into the middle of the story instead of leaving buyers to guess from a few nice words on the front of the can. That does not automatically make every can of Season perfect, but it gives buyers a much clearer foundation than many cans that sell themselves with only a few nice words on the front. And really, that is what I like about Season. It does not try too hard. It sits right in the zone many sardine eaters need, most easy enough to buy, practical enough, and trustworthy enough to become a habit. It sits in a more realistic zone, easy to buy, still reasonably priced, and close enough to the kind of sardines people can eat regularly, not just buy once to try. This is very important. A good can of fish in real life is not always the most expensive can. Sometimes it is the can you can open on an ordinary afternoon, eat with toast rice salad or a few crackers, and still feel fine about buying again. If you choose the right variety, especially the ones that are not pulled too far away by sauce or strong flavoring Season, gives the feeling that the fish is still at the center. The fish still holds its shape. The smell is not too sharp. The oil or water does not make you want to pour it out right away. And that sounds simple, but in the world of canned sardines, simple is sometimes a very big compliment. Of course, Season should not be put on a pedestal. You still have to look at each specific variety, how much sodium, what kind of oil bone in, or boneless, skinless, or whole sardines. But for someone who wants a practical choice with a clearer fish source and without marketing that makes things confusing, Season is a name worth considering. Season does not try to turn sardines into a fancy dish. It reminds buyers that a good can of fish sometimes only needs to open clean, keep the fish intact, and make you want to come back the next time. Number 2, King Oscar. Some cans of fish do not need to surprise you. They just need to do one thing right. Make the 10th can feel like the first can when you open it. That is why King Oscar has its own place in the world of canned sardines. It is not the cheapest choice. It is also not always the con that makes serious food people argue the loudest. But for many long-time sardine eaters, consistency is sometimes worth more than a wow moment. King Oscar is a brand with a long history from Norway, known for its small, soft, bristling sardines that are often packed more neatly in the can than many budget varieties. But what is more important is the feeling of control. The company says it regularly tests its products for groups of substances such as heavy metals, PCBs, phthalates, and bisphenols, while also saying its products meet or exceed relevant FDA and EFSA standards. That control information does not make King Oscar a perfect choice, but it creates something very valuable with canned food, the feeling that you have to guess less when you open the lid. At least it gives buyers the sense that there is a system behind the can of fish, not just a nice logo and a few promises on the front. With sardines, consistency shows very clearly at the moment you open the lid. The fish is not broken into pieces too much. The smell does not hit you in the face in an unpleasant way. The oil or sauce usually does not make you want to pour it out right away. The texture feels more controlled, not the kind where every can you open feels like a gamble. But King Oscar is not a can of fish for every taste either. Small bristling sardines are usually softer, fattier, and neater in the can, which many people like, but some people want. The feeling of larger, firmer fish with a stronger flavor. This is not a matter of right or wrong. It is about the kind of experience you are looking for. If Season represents practical value from Morocco, then King Oscar represents something else: consistency. Not a can of fish that shows off. Just a can of fish that makes you open it and feel like you know pretty well what is waiting inside. Number 3, Nuri/Pinhais. Nuri sits in a completely different world, the world where people do not open sardines just to get protein and finish a meal. Nuri belongs to Pinhais, a name tied to Matosinhos, Portugal, where canned fish culture is not just about convenience. It is craft. It is skill. It is the way a small fish is selected, cleaned, placed into a can, then covered with oil as if it still deserves to be treated like a real meal. And that is why Nuri is often mentioned when people talk about Portuguese sardines. The difference with Nuri is not in some huge promise on the package. It is in the very small moment when you open the can. The fish is often neatly arranged with intention, not like it was just dumped into the tin. The oil does not feel like something you need to drain immediately. With cans like this, the oil is not just a liquid used to preserve the fish, it is almost part of the meal. You can dip bread into it, you can mix it with pasta, you can use it as the base for a simple plate, add a little lemon pepper, thinly sliced onion, and let the fish say the rest. This is where Nuri is different from cheap cans. It does not need heavy smoke flavor or overpowering sauce to make it feel like it has flavor. It puts its trust in the fish and the way it is handled. But let's be honest, Nuri is not an everyday choice for every budget. If you just need a cheap can of fish for a quick meal, it may be too expensive. But if you want to understand why so many people say Portuguese sardines have their own place, Nuri is a very clear example. Nuri does not just sell fish in a can, it sells a way of handling fish that you can recognize the moment you open the lid. The fish is arranged with intention. The oil is not just there for preservation, but also to be eaten with it. And the flavor does not need to hide behind smoke sauce or overly strong seasoning. That is the big difference between a cheap can of fish you eat just to finish a meal and a can that makes you want to grab another piece of bread to wipe up the oil left behind. With Nuri, what is worth paying for is not just the fish. It is the feeling that the fish was treated properly before it reached your hands. The most important thing after this list is not that you have to be afraid of any can of fish. It is the way we buy familiar foods too quickly. Some things sit in the pantry for so long that we forget they still change, from formula to formula factory to factory product line to product line oil choice to sauce choice. Sardines are just one example. Today it is a can of fish. Tomorrow it could be soup, tuna baked beans, olive oil, or any food you have bought for years without turning the can around to look at the back. So next time you open a can of sardines, do not open it with fear. Open it with awareness. Look a little closer. Choose a little slower. And if there is one can that has ever disappointed you, leave a comment. I would really like to know which brand made you trust again and which brand made you say, all right, this is the last time. If you like videos that help you look back at familiar foods in the kitchen in a more practical way, subscribe to the channel. The most ordinary things are sometimes the ones most worth checking.